Hey everybody, it's Jeremy. Welcome back to EA Tetragrammaton, where we are playing This is turn 37. As fair warning, I'm a bit under the weather, so I apologize in advance for any sniffling, sneezing, bad, mucusy sounding things, etc. But gotta get turn done, so let's jump into things. Alright, we've got a whole host of site searching spells and actually quite a few successes. So let's flip through this. Found a Howling Gorge with an Auspex, right? So Howling Gorge is 1 air gem per turn. Found nothing with the Voice of Absu. We found a Flaming Tomb with the Dark Knowledge. That's a Death and a Fire. Good. Found a Wellspring of Secrets with the second Voice of Absu. So that's a Water. 4 gems already. Nothing with the 2 Gnome Lords, nothing with the... And... So, we've got this big battle in Trackless Wastes, and this kind of spoils, but no worries, we're going to watch this many times. Not many, probably watch it. So we lost, right? But why did we lose? How badly did we lose? And what does it mean for... Let's figure it out. So I'm going to preempt by saying that this loss is not... I mean, it hurts, right? Obviously, we don't want to lose all of the forces and mages and stuff like that that we have. But I don't think I would have done it if I thought it honestly meant like we were completely out of the game, right? Like, it wasn't a desperation moment, so I wouldn't have done it unless it was... I wouldn't have lost the army or risked losing the army if I thought losing the army was going to put us out of the game. Okay. So let's watch this real quick. It's kind of a full battle, honestly. So, we've got a massive horde from Yomi, filled with a bunch of different things. There's a bunch of wolves, right, that are free spawned from all of his Dionis and Onishugos. There's a whole shit ton of Ko-Onis, about 140, 150, something like that. There's close to 100 or so Ao-Onis, which shoot or hit this, have this cold hit, which is pretty cool. There's a bunch of regular Onis, and a small handful of the Kuro-Onis. There's a couple of demon generals in here, and there's quite a few Bakemono shows, both the club and I think spear variant, or mostly just the club variant. Looks like mostly just the club variant. Okay, very cool. And then very importantly, there's these whites. Alright, what do we have going on? We've got our big block of infantry, we've got some province defense, we've got our Mushushus and our Ishibs. We've got a mix of magery in the front. We've got some little potential air catchers in the back, right? Some clockwork horrors and some militia. Let's do a high level just watch of the battle. Okay, so we're rushing forward. We've got Divine Blessing comes out. Province Defense comes out. We got the Swarm comes out, right? We've got Lightning Strikes beginning to fall down. A bunch of shots, a bunch of ranged attacks coming from his forces. Mostly his Onishugos, right? They've got their Throw Flames ability. Our Mushushus go into the line. I'm gonna squeech in. Kind of like watch things go on. And now you're gonna see kind of after the initial scriptings go off, right? We've still got all of the lightning bolts coming down, everything like that. The Mushushus get into thing. They seem to be doing okay. And then we're gonna hold this. So all of these Ao-Onis break. They start to run against the Mushushus, but then you see the Mushushus begin to kind of like get frozen, and they start to disappear. Okay, and now you're gonna see almost exclusively the casting that happens is almost all final rest. And it's all targeting these whites up here. Right? So we're not really getting storm castings. We're not really getting smite demon castings. It's almost exclusively a bunch of final rest spam against these whites. And you can see now there's Diones up here. The whites are still here. They've started to kill most of my Mushushus. They're pushing down around. The line of my infantry actually held against the massive swarm of Ko-Onis for a very, very long time. We were starting to get flanked over here just a tad. But that is about it. All right, let's take a look at some of the losses, and then we're going to watch the battle again. Okay, so what did he actually end up losing? He didn't really end up losing any of his commanders. He lost 38 of his Ao-Onis, okay? 31 of his Bakemono Shos, 14 of his nearly 300 Ko-Onis, 1 Kuro-Onis, and 32 whites, okay? Now, the Ko-Onis look like they have 50 billion kills. In actuality, that's mostly swarm. So it's mostly chaff that they killed off. Okay. What did we lose? We lost 1 Insi. We lost our 3 Galas. We didn't lose any of our Gurus or any of our Ishibs. We did not lose our High Priest. We lost all of the Clockwork Horrors. We lost half of our Inki's Chosen. We lost most of our Mushushus and most of our Urguard. Okay. Oofa doofa. Alright, let's watch this again and look at some more specific things. So, let's talk about mistakes. What were mistakes that I made in this fight? 1, this was just not a large enough army. Okay. I think 2, right? I made the mistake of not having proper supply control many turns ago. So keep in mind, most of this army is diseased and has at least 1 wound. Most of them have 2, and many have 3. Okay. So that's a problem in and of itself. Right, our combat efficiency is significantly decreased compared to what it should be. So we'll actually count that as issue 1 because that was several turns in the making. Issue 2 is that we're honestly even with that, we're just not quite a big enough force to take this on. We should have probably about another 100 units or so. I think if we had another 100 units, we would probably have won this handily. 50 units, right, is in that range of, like, I don't know if we would have won, but we would have held a lot longer, and maybe that would have worked out. We would have been able to cause a rout. I don't know. Okay? So, those are 2 problems. What's another big problem? Another big problem is actually placement of my freaking forces. And so, I don't know if the player did this intentionally, but these whites honestly actually fucked me. So the whites in combination with the Ao-Oni. So the Ao-Oni have this cold hit, right, which is fatigue damage. But specifically the whites having the chill aura screwed over my Mushushus because my Mushushus got locked in with the whites and really started to get frozen down, right? It still took the whites a long time to get through the Mushushus because while the Mushushus were attacking, they were still killing a lot of things. But once the Mushushus started to get frozen, they couldn't do anything in return, right? I still think I would have lost, but if I had flipped this formation, if the Mushushus had been on the bottom side, I think I would have killed twice as many of the things that I would have killed because we would have gone into Bakemono Shos and Ko-Onis, and the Mushushus would have just destroyed those. Instead, we went into Ao-Onis, which we did end up routing really quickly, but then we got stuck in with the whites, and the whites we couldn't We couldn't route because we were getting frozen and because they're just tougher, right? So I think that's one issue. Staying in, and this is something that I have a bad habit of doing, right? I have a bad habit of establishing a formation and then just staying in that formation. And part of it's laziness as a player, part of it's my schedule, right? I don't have a lot of time to take turns. I try to be consistent about my turn taking. I try to be cognizant of the other players in the game. I don't want to always be the last person taking a turn, so I try to just get my turns done. But I try to be, obviously I'm trying to do well, but I'm not trying to micromanage and be super nitpicky about every single thing constantly, right? But that leads me to fall into bad habits like this, where I establish a formation and I just leave the formation there. So he's seen me, and at least probably 2 battles have these Mushushus up top, which means 2 battles, maybe even more than that, right? Which means this could have been planned. I don't know that it was, but this could have been planned. And it's important to try to mix things up with your enemies so that they aren't able to read your moves like this very well. Now I think I still would have lost even if I had put the Mushushus down on the south, because I think without anything to hold, while the Mushushus were held up by the whites, I think also the whites were held up by the Mushushus, right? So I think if I had flipped down to where the Mushushus were on the south, the whites would have eventually just flanked me anyways and routed me that way. But I think I would have killed way more Ko-Oni and Bakemono Sho and things like that before we got routed, etc., etc. So those are kind of like the mistakes as far as I have seen them. Other than that, I think things actually went really okay for what it was, right? Our buffs went off pretty well, our swarms went off pretty well, and they did their job, right? They just filled in the gaps and held things down for a while. Our infantry line actually held for a very long time. I think another thing that really screwed me, these whites were fucking MVPs in this scenario, honestly. Another thing that really screwed me was what I thought was going to be really good for me, right? I thought my Mage Core was really going to help me out here. But as we watch it, right? The whites being here really made everyone focus on trying to, like, banish them out. Which means that we weren't doing anti-demon spells. We weren't doing, after we kind of like did our initial volleys, our initial scripting, we weren't doing lightning bolts or anything like that, you know? It's really kind of unfortunate, right? Like, all of these go down. We get our smite demons, we get our lightning bolts. We do a good job with that. But immediately afterwards, I think we're pretty close to the end. It's final rest spam for, like, the rest of the fight. And unfortunately, like, on one hand, you're like, yeah, but, you know, you're getting rid of the whites. Really not, though, because, like, these guys have such high magic resistance that final rest, I don't think final rest does very much here. Like, we can sit here and watch, like, okay, it burned 2 whites away there. None. 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 Oh, 1. We got 1. 1. Okay, actually, maybe final rest is the only reason why these whites got whittled down. You know what? Maybe I'm wrong there. So maybe final rest actually was the only reason I did nearly as good as I did. But that being said, it was a fun fight. I took the fight because I thought there was a chance. I thought that it was a gamble, but I thought if my Mushushus got in and amongst the Ko-Onis and the Bakemono Shos and the Ao-Onis, like we saw, right, we would get some routes because they can kill so quickly. But my Mushushu's kind of got into a bad engagement. They got stuck in there, and it did not go well. So, no worries. I think at the end of the day, I was just wrong, and I probably needed, even if I had a non-diseased, non-wounded force, I would still have needed like another 50 to 100 units to really like have the weight to keep everything around. But you can see, like, there's a lot of fatigue. There's a lot of people routing. We routed a good chunk of Aonis. We killed a good number of units. We just didn't have quite enough yet. So. Let's look at everything else real quick. We've got a hidden laboratory in Underspring with some pearls, blood slaves, boots of water walking. We've got a wound on Gala 16, during a mistake with an elixir. The fortification to Trackless Wastes have been breached. It's patrolling, and the goddess of Charmatia has been permanently vanquished. Okay, so what are we doing this turn? All right, we're doing a couple of different things. He has a massive army here on Trackless Wastes. I feel like it's probably likely that he storms the castle and kills all of these units next turn. We're not going to worry about doing a whole lot of stuff. Kind of set up in the same formation that they were previously. There's not really much I can do. There's not a lab here, so I can't send items to them or load them up with gems to try to do like a bunch of elemental spam or something like that, which I think could potentially be useful. But that's okay, no big deal. We are sending Scout 14, has taken the Dragon Helm and 2 of the Endless Bags of Wine, and will ferry them home. There's no reason to lose the items if we don't have to lose the items. If we had a lab, we would even consider like cloud trapezing. Do I have a cloud trapeze? I do not have cloud trapeze. I should get cloud trapeze. We would consider like cloud trapezing things out in this type of scenario, but we don't have it, and we don't have a lab, so we can't. So Trackless Wastes, these units are probably dead. It happens. But what does that mean? Well, first of all, you can look at our income. That does mean our upkeep is about to get freed up a whole bunch. It already did. Remember, keep in mind, we were close to, I think we were actually about 800 or 900 on the income already. So our upkeep has already dropped significantly from the losses that we had in that battle. So that's a silver lining, right? It's going to allow us to produce things and do fortifications, infrastructure, and things like that pretty significantly. Not a big deal. That's going to increase when all of these mages die. But Lanka has a force, a pretty significantly large force here in the Cloudbreakers, and is intent on heading to the capital this turn. So, if Yomi delays with me, basically the scenario is if Yomi delays with me, they are, it's not a guarantee, but they are likely giving up their capital. Because the force here is large enough to probably pop it in a single turn. And if they storm the fort here, then the fort gets popped here. The next turn they storm the fort, and then this, this force is not able to actually meet in time. Now there are some scatterings, right? Keep in mind all those Aonis ran from us, or got routed, right? It looks like a good portion of them headed into Feral Woods, which is where the other section went. So maybe he tries to do a defense here in Yomi with what he's got there. But what we found out is if we look at this, this is basically everything that he has. He took all of the units that he had at his disposal and he put them in a big death ball. So he doesn't really have much of anything in his capital. Okay? And keep in mind, right, I just lost that big battle, but I've got another big-ish army right here. I've got a second army forming here, right? I've got troop recruitment going on here. I've got mages, a good amount of mages in multiple different locations. So, like, this is a loss for us, but it's not the end of the world loss. It's a, I'm going to tell you straight up what it is. It's a, I've kind of, in my mind, already said, oh, well, Pan's going to win this game because we fucked up and we missed our opportunity, right? And I'm saying we because I'm including myself in that, right? So this is kind of a me going, oh, well, the loss against Yomi isn't going to lose me the game. We'll still win the war against Yomi. It'll just take a little longer. But Pan's going to win anyway, so that's the generalized concept. That's a bad attitude. You shouldn't have that attitude in this type of game. And I'm just making. Anyways, what else are we doing this turn? Well, to make sure that we don't, right? There's the concept that Yomi goes, all right, well, I'm gonna lose, so I'm gonna be punitive. So fuck it, boom, or kill everything here in Trackless Waste, and the next turn goes boom, boom, kills everything that he can in Agartha, goes boom, kills everything that. Okay, so. Two factors, that possibility and the fact that Belagor is already being sieged by Pan means I'm actually going to bring this army back instead of heading towards Belagor because it's already basically taken. So I'm going to head up towards Yomi's territory with the secondary army. We'll stop, grab stuff in on the way. We're going to continue to, with our newly found income, we're going to continue to recruit things on the way up there, including, but not limited to, more Ishibs, etc. So, basically, we're going to try to raise a second more powerful army to head up north and deal with Yomi. And that'll be a couple turns in the making, and in the meantime, what are we going to do? In the meantime, we've got a couple of plans. One plan is a secondary force to defend the homeland, right? We're going to try to develop that. The second plan is a whole shit ton of site searching, right? So we've got one Auspex, Gnome Lore, Haruspex, Dark Knowledge, Haruspex, Voice of Apsu. Do we have anything over here? We've got an Auspex over here. We've got a Lizard Shaman here. We've got a Arcane Probing here. We've got Voice of Apsu up here. Gnome Lore up here. We're doing a metric shit ton of site searching. Trying to do the site search, a whole bunch of stuff as quickly as possible, and then hope that we get good luck, and then reap the rewards from our site searching. We are empowering Enchantress 2 to be able to get Fire 2, be able to go that route as well. We are continuing our forging, right? We're forging another Dwarven Hammer, but we're also starting to forge up some basic gear for thugging and or our god, right? Because keep in mind, our god is a very strong super combatant in the right situations, and we are at the point to where we have enough galas to where we can basically one turn resummon him. Well, with the 3 galas dead over here, we might not have that much anymore. So we might actually have to focus on gala recruitment for a little bit. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Got 10, 11. So yeah, that's not quite enough. You need about 15 to be able to pretty much guarantee. So Elegist means that they get +2 when calling back, so they count as basically a 3. If you had 15, you get 45, which isn't actually technically a guarantee, I guess, but it's almost always. It almost always works that way, right? If you have about 15 galas, you can typically one turn call a god back. And we're so our god does not gain or doesn't lose paths. If anything, it actually just has a chance to gain paths because of the gain of death. So we're doing some basic forging to make sure that our god can be utilized in the right situations. In the next turns, I'll make sure to prioritize some galas there. And that's pretty much it. So research-wise, we are going to be aiming, continuing our aim towards Alteration 6, and probably towards Alteration 7 after that. However, we might make a little pit stop at Conjuration 5, because we are actually getting close to being able to summon a new Galu, right? So, if we take a look at a Gudu, we can empower a Gudu for 45 air gems. We can do that now, but it doesn't behoove us to do so. We're basically just spending gems in a turn to do nothing but getting a person an extra path, which I guess is like research in the long run. But we could use those gems for something else in an emergency. So we're not going to do that. So we're going to wait for a little while longer until we have the ability to basically go empower, next turn Ugalu, boom, Ugalu. But that means we do need to keep our eyes on where we're at with Conjuration. But in the meantime, Alteration is still going to be, I think, the most effective path for us. I think if we get to Alteration 7, which we could do pretty easily, it's turn 37. I say pretty. We're not really focusing on research very well, but we could shift gears, which we might actually end up doing, as we send this second army up, right? Because here's my assumption of what's going to happen. My assumption is that Lanka is going to hit Yomi. Yomi is going to kill our force here. Lanka is going to hit Yomi. Then Yomi is going to go over there, fight. I think there's the possibility that Yomi wins, right? Beats Lanka, but loses a shit ton of units. And then Lanka and I basically come in with secondary armies and clean up afterwards, right? Because if you think about the number of turns that it's going to take, right? It's going to take, next turn, I'll be here. Then he'll be, the turn after that, he'll be here, I'll be in Turn after that, he'll be in Yomi, I'll be, actually I can make the jump from to Perenna, almost guaranteed, right? So he'll be in Yomi. Next jump, he'll pop if Lanka stays in the fort, he'll pop the fort. I'll be here, etc. So then we're already basically like back into Yomi's lands in that amount of time. It's actually surprising how many turns can go by so quickly while you're traversing areas with armies. Pretty interesting. Anyways, I'm yapping. I'm tired. I have a cold. I'm going to bed. This is where we're at right now. I'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody.